The ocean floor holds history's greatest secrets. Sunken ships are not just tragic wrecks, they are time capsules that changed the course of civilization. You are about to discover how these echoes from the depths have redirected global trade, sparked wars, and rewritten our entire understanding of the past. We will journey from a Bronze Age vessel carrying the very metals that powered empires to a ship whose sinking plunged the world into economic panic. How could a single disaster buried at sea alter the fate of nations? By the end of this exploration, you will see history in a completely new light, revealed by the stories preserved in the deep. We will uncover why a famous ocean liner's loss shattered an era's arrogance, and how a mysterious ancient device found in a wreck proved our ancestors were far more advanced than we ever knew. What forgotten story from the depths do you think holds the most power to change our view of history? Buried beneath the Mediterranean waves for over 3,000 years, the Uluburun wreckage is more than a collection of artifacts. It is a detailed ledger of a lost global economy. Discovered off the coast of Turkey, this ship from the late 14th century before Christ was a floating warehouse, its hull packed with the very lifeblood of Bronze Age empires. 10 tons of copper ingots, shaped like stretched oxides, were stacked alongside a ton of precious tin. Mixed together, these two metals created bronze, the alloy that gave the era its name, and from which weapons, tools, and prestige objects were forged. Without this steady supply, the great kingdoms of the pharaohs and the Mycenaean warlords would have faltered, but the ship's manifest did not stop there. It carried African ebony, gleaming Baltic amber, Canaanite jars filled with resin, and even a gold scarab bearing the name of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti. Each item tells a story of long-distance deals and diplomatic gifts, connecting continents in a web of commerce that stretched from the Nile to the Nordic forests. This was not a simple local trade route. It was an intricate international system, proving that the palaces of the ancient world were deeply interdependent. Their power was built on a foundation of maritime exchange, a network as vital as it was vulnerable. The silent collapse of this single vessel onto the seafloor did not just lose a cargo. It exposed the breathtaking fragility of an entire civilization, a system so finely tuned that its disruption could echo for centuries. The intricate trade network of the Uluburun ship was the Bronze Age's beating heart. But that heart was about to stop. Across the Mediterranean, a storm was gathering, one not of wind and wave but of men. From the murky depths of history, they are known only as the Sea Peoples. Their origins are a riddle, their names mostly lost, but their impact was cataclysmic. They are the specters blamed for burning cities and toppling empires. While we have never found a ship confirmed as theirs, the clues are etched not just in ash at ruined coastal cities, but in the silent wrecks of the traders they displaced. The sudden disappearance of ships carrying vital cargo, like the one at Uluburun, marks a terrifying moment. The maritime highways that carried 10 tons of copper and tin were severed. Imagine the consequence. Bronze is an alloy requiring both copper and tin. With no tin arriving by sea, the recipe for power was broken. Armies could not be supplied with new weapons. Kingdoms built on this economic foundation found it crumbling beneath them. The great Hittite Empire, a superpower of its day, vanished almost overnight. Even a victorious but battered Egypt found its influence shattered, retreating into a long decline. This was not a single battle lost, it was a world order unraveling. The shipwrecks from this chaotic time are the sunken evidence of a globalized system in its death throes. They mark a violent, decisive pivot in human history, a descent from a connected Bronze Age into a darker, more fragmented Iron Age. It is a stark lesson that a disaster at sea can strand entire civilizations. This pattern of a single maritime catastrophe triggering a chain reaction would replay itself millennia later, with even higher stakes for the modern world. Centuries after the Bronze Age collapse, another ship foundered, and with it sank a vision of the future. Spongedivers discovered the wreck off the island of Antikythera in the early 20th century, pulling up statues and treasures from the 1st century before Christ. But the most significant find was a corroded lump of bronze, which after careful study revealed a system of interlocking gears of breathtaking complexity. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, an ancient computer lost at sea. Its dials and inscriptions could calculate the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, predict lunar and solar eclipses, and even track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. It was a portable cosmos, a mechanical universe engineered from bronze. The existence of such a device in the 1st century before Christ rewrites history. It demonstrates a level of scientific understanding and mechanical engineering that scholars believed was impossible for another 1,000 years. This was not merely a philosophical toy. It was a precise instrument of prediction, born from a tradition of technical knowledge that has otherwise vanished completely. The loss of this single ship and the mechanism it carried arguably set back the course of science for centuries. Imagine if this knowledge had reached the great libraries of Alexandria or Rome and been built upon. The history of technology, of astronomy, even of global exploration, might have accelerated at an unimaginable pace. Instead, this spark of genius was extinguished by the sea. It is a haunting reminder that brilliant ideas can be as fragile as the wooden hulls that carry them, and that the ocean's depths hold not just lost cargo, but lost futures. This loss of advanced knowledge makes you wonder what other intellectual treasures were swallowed by the waves, a thought that pulls us toward the age of exploration, when ships carried not just goods, but the very maps of the world. The ocean that swallowed the Antikythera Mechanism held other futures in its grasp. Just over 15 centuries later, the fate of empires again rested on the waves, this time in the cold, churning waters of the North Sea. In 1588, the most powerful naval force ever assembled, the Spanish Armada, sailed with divine purpose. Its mission was to invade England, overthrow Queen Elizabeth I, and return the island to Catholic dominance. The Spanish galleons were floating fortresses, their decks crowded with soldiers and their holds filled with the supplies for a conquest. Yet this mighty fleet, deemed invincible, met its match not just in the smaller, more agile English ships, but in the fury of the weather itself. A series of brutal North Sea storms scattered the Spanish formation, driving the great wooden vessels onto the rocky coasts of Scotland and Ireland. The wreck of the galleon Giana, discovered centuries later, tells a silent story of that catastrophe. Its remains held gold coins, personal ornaments, and the grim evidence of a desperate crew, all lost to the sea. This was more than a naval defeat. It was a geopolitical earthquake. The failure of the Armada secured Protestant England's independence from Spanish control and shattered the aura of Spain's unshakable power. The door was now open for England, and soon Britain, to rise as a dominant global force, its own empire eventually shaping the laws, languages, and borders of the modern world. This event stands as a monumental lesson. It proves that the ambitions of kings and the strength of armies can be rendered meaningless by the unpredictable power of climate and fortune. With Spanish dominance curtailed, a power vacuum emerged on the high seas, one that new nations were eager to fill. The quest for global riches would now accelerate, leading to ventures of unimaginable scale and risk, where the loss of a single ship could trigger a financial panic felt across the entire world. The Vasa was meant to be the crowning glory of the Swedish Navy, a symbol of imperial power. Yet on its maiden voyage in 1628, this magnificent warship sailed less than a single nautical mile. A gentle breeze filled its sails, the ship heeled over, and water poured through the open gun ports. In full view of a horrified public, the Vasa simply capsized and sank to the bottom of Stockholm harbor. The cold, brackish waters of the Baltic Sea acted as a perfect preservative, leaving the ship a time capsule for over 3 centuries. When it was raised in 1961, it was not just a wreck, but a nearly intact piece of the 17th century. The disaster was not born of a storm or enemy fire, but of fatal design flaws. The king, Gustavus Adolphus, desperate for a powerful new warship in the midst of the 30 Years' War, demanded a vessel with an unprecedented 2-gun decks. His impatience overruled caution. Stability tests were rushed or ignored entirely. The result was a top-heavy ship, an engineering disaster waiting for its first command to sail. The sinking was a colossal financial and prestige blow, a very public humiliation for the king and his nation. It stands as a timeless lesson in the dangers of hubris, where ambition and authority deafen leaders to the warnings of experts. This same deadly combination of flawed design and human suffering would be tragically replicated on a horrific scale, not in warships, but in the floating prisons of the transatlantic slave trade. The cold iron ballast bars recovered from the São José wreck are not just inert metal. They are a stark ledger of human lives. In 1794, the Portuguese slave ship São José Paquete Africa was completing its horrific journey from Mozambique to Brazil when it struck rocks and sank near Cape Town. While the crew and some captives were rescued, more than 200 enslaved Africans drowned, trapped within the sinking hull. For centuries, their story was a silent tragedy recorded only in sparse documents. But the ship's recent identification and archaeological study have turned this patch of ocean floor into a sacred, somber memorial. The key evidence was the iron ballast. On a typical cargo ship, ballast is stone or sand, but on a slave ship, heavy iron bars were used specifically to counterbalance the weight of human beings chained below deck. This single, chilling detail transforms the wreck from a maritime accident into a physical testament to the Middle Passage. The ship's very structure was engineered for the brutal economics of human bondage. Each artifact recovered, from a wooden pulley block to a single iron leg shackle, helps to tell a story that written ship manifests and insurance records deliberately obscured. These objects give a voice to the voiceless, forcing a direct and heartbreaking reckoning with the scale of the crime. This was not merely trade, it was a calculated industry of suffering, where human beings were reduced to units of cargo on a balance sheet. The legacy of maritime networks like this one is built on a foundation of profound human cost, a stark and terrible contrast to the ships that carried copper, spices, or gold. The ocean that preserves these echoes from the depths holds not just lost treasure, but the heavy truth of our shared history. The silent iron ballast of the São José speaks of a human cost measured in lives, but another shipwreck would soon measure loss in dollars and cents, shaking the very foundations of the American economy. The SS Central America was known as the Ship of Gold for a reason. In September 1857, this side-wheel steamer was plowing through a hurricane off the Carolina coast, its vaults and strongrooms packed with an astonishing cargo. It carried over 30,000 pounds of gold, freshly mined from California, bound for the banking houses of New York. This was not just treasure, it was the physical backbone of a rapidly expanding national economy. The coins and raw bullion represented capital for loans, security for new railroads, and the very confidence that kept commerce flowing. When the ship succumbed to the storm and sank, taking more than 400 lives and all that gold to the seabed, the news did not just cause sadness. It sent a shockwave of pure panic through the financial world. The sudden removal of such a massive amount of liquid capital created an immediate credit crunch. Banks, which had loaned money against the expectation of this gold, suddenly found themselves overextended and unstable. The New York branch of the Ohio Life Insurance and Trust Company failed, triggering a cascade of bank runs and business closures. This was the panic of 1857, a severe economic depression that gripped the nation. The crisis exposed and deepened the growing rift between the industrial North, which relied on this kind of financial system, and the agrarian South, which viewed the Northern panic as a sign of a flawed and fragile economy. The loss of a single ship did not cause the Civil War, but it dramatically heightened the tensions that would lead to it, proving that a disaster at sea could reverberate through boardrooms and farms alike. Over a century later, the ship's discovery brought a new kind of shock. The recovery of its golden cargo, perfectly preserved in the deep cold, was more than a treasure hunt. It gave economists a physical, tangible proof of the event they had only read about in history books, a dramatic case study of how maritime commerce and financial stability are inextricably linked. This vulnerability would be tested again on a scale the world had never seen when a ship deemed unsinkable met its fate on a cold April night. No ship in history has ever embodied such a profound confidence in human ingenuity or suffered a more devastating rebuttal. When the RMS Titanic slipped beneath the frigid Atlantic waters in April 1912, it took with it more than 1,500 souls. It sank an entire worldview. The ship was famously declared unsinkable, a floating palace that represented the pinnacle of Edwardian engineering and social order. Its loss was a shock that reverberated far beyond the grieving families. It was a brutal public lesson in the limits of technology and the arrogance of believing we could conquer nature. The iceberg did not just rip open the hull, it tore open an era's complacency. In the immediate aftermath, public outrage focused on the stark, unforgivable math of the lifeboats. There were only enough for about half of the people on board. This single, glaring failure became the catalyst for the most significant overhaul of maritime safety regulations the world had ever seen. The first International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, known as SOLAS, was convened directly in response to the disaster. It mandated enough lifeboats for every person aboard a ship. It established the International Ice Patrol to monitor North Atlantic icebergs, a service that continues to this day and has prevented countless other tragedies. These were not minor adjustments. They were a fundamental rewriting of the rules, a global acknowledgement that profit and speed could no longer outweigh the absolute priority of human safety. The Titanic story hardened into a powerful cultural parable, a story we return to again and again. It speaks of the rigid class divisions that saw third-class passengers trapped below decks, of the quiet heroism of the band playing on, and of the fatal chain of human errors from ignored ice warnings to a fatal lack of binoculars. It forced a global conversation about accountability, a conversation that would echo into the next great conflict, when the very laws born from this tragedy would be cast aside in the chaos of total war. The new rules of the sea, written in the wake of the Titanic, were about to be torn apart. In the cold spring waters of the North Atlantic on May 7, 1915, the British ocean liner RMS Lusitania was steaming off the coast of Ireland. Without warning, a single torpedo from a German U-boat slammed into its hull. A second, internal explosion, likely from the secret munitions it was carrying for the Allied war effort, ripped the ship apart. It sank in just 18 minutes. 1,198 people died, including 128 American citizens. The public shock was immediate and visceral. Newspapers printed lists of the dead, and photographs of the victims' families and children made the catastrophe feel personal. The attack on a vessel perceived globally as a civilian passenger ship was seen as an act of barbarism. The German justification that the ship was a legitimate military target because it carried war supplies was drowned out by the international outcry. The sinking of the Lusitania became the single most powerful piece of propaganda for the Allies, a rallying cry that painted Germany as a nation willing to wage war without limits or morality. This single maritime event fundamentally shifted global public opinion, creating a powerful current that began pulling the neutral United States toward the heart of the conflict. It demonstrated a brutal new reality that in the age of modern warfare, a single submarine lurking in the depths could execute a strike with geopolitical consequences far beyond any naval battle. The outrage over the Lusitania festered for 2 years, fueling the American decision to finally enter the war and tipping the scales decisively against Germany. It stands as a stark lesson in how an action at sea can detonate on land, reshaping the alliances and outcomes of a world at war. The shadow of this new, invisible threat would only grow longer, evolving from a tactical weapon into a vessel of ultimate destruction. The tranquility of a Hawaiian Sunday morning was shattered by the roar of Japanese warplanes. On December 7, 1941, the battleship USS Arizona was moored in Pearl Harbor when a massive armor-piercing bomb struck its forward magazine. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic, tearing the ship apart and sealing the fate of 1,177 sailors and Marines inside. In moments, the mighty battleship was gone, transformed from a symbol of naval power into a submerged tomb. This single act of destruction did more than sink a ship. It detonated the isolationist sentiment that had kept the United States on the sidelines of the global conflict. The nation, previously divided, was instantly unified by a collective shock and a demand for retaliation. The sleeping giant, as the Japanese admiral who planned the attack would later call it, was indeed awakened with a furious resolve. Congress declared war the next day, and American industrial and military might was thrown fully into the Second World War, a decisive shift that would ultimately lead to Allied victory. The wreck of the Arizona, left where it sank, became a permanent national memorial. Oil still slowly seeps from its fuel tanks, rising to the water's surface like black tears, a visceral reminder of the lives lost that day. But the ship's legacy extends beyond remembrance. The success of the Japanese carrier-based air attack sounded the death knell for the battleship as the dominant weapon of naval warfare. The era of massive fleets trading broadsides was over, decisively replaced by the long-range power of aircraft carriers. This fundamental change in military doctrine, forced by the wreckage in Pearl Harbor, reshaped every navy on the planet for the rest of the century and beyond. The Arizona is more than a relic. It is a sacred space where water and memory merge, a stark lesson in how a single day at sea can alter the destiny of the world. As this global war raged across every ocean, countless other vessels would join it on the seabed, each with a story locked in its silent hull. The sheer scale of the loss is almost impossible to grasp. In the final, frozen months of World War II in Europe, the German liner Wilhelm Gustloff was packed with more than 10,000 refugees, desperately fleeing the advancing Soviet army. It was January 1945, and the Baltic Sea was a frozen hell. The ship, once a symbol of Nazi leisure, was now a chaotic vessel of last resort, its decks crammed with civilians, mostly women and children, alongside wounded German soldiers. Then, in the dark of night, 3 torpedoes from a Soviet submarine struck the Gustloff's hull. The ship listed violently and sank in less than 1 hour. An estimated 9,000 people perished in the icy water, a death toll 6 times greater than that of the Titanic. This single event stands as the deadliest maritime disaster in human history, a horrifying tragedy of war that remains strangely obscure in the Western world. The story of the Gustloff forces a difficult confrontation. It does not erase the monstrous crimes of the Nazi regime that started the war, but it forces us to acknowledge the catastrophic fallout that ultimately consumed German civilians in a whirlwind of violence their own leaders had unleashed. This was the brutal endgame where the lines between military and civilian, aggressor and victim, were blurred beyond recognition in a desperate struggle for survival. The sea, indifferent to the politics of those it swallows, became a mass grave. This profound human loss at sea finds its counterpoint in another wreck, one that carried not people, but a cargo of pure knowledge, a scientific treasure whose loss would stall an entire field of study for generations. There is another kind of echo from the depths, one not of tragedy but of triumph. The wooden hull of Sir Ernest Shackleton's Endurance did not simply sink. It was slowly, inexorably crushed by the immense pressure of the Antarctic pack ice in 1915. The ship was lost, but its story was only beginning. What followed was one of the most incredible sagas of survival ever recorded. Shackleton and his entire crew of 27 men watched their vessel be consumed by the ice, then faced a seemingly hopeless situation. They were stranded on an ice floe, hundreds of miles from any known civilization, in the most hostile environment on Earth. Yet, through a series of daring journeys in small lifeboats across the ferocious Southern Ocean and a desperate trek across the uncharted mountains of South Georgia Island, Shackleton led every single man to safety. Not one life was lost. This story transformed a maritime disaster into a timeless legend of leadership, camaraderie, and sheer human grit. For over a century, the wreck of the Endurance itself became a ghost, a tantalizing target for explorers hidden beneath the treacherous, ice-choked waters of the Weddell Sea. Then, in 2022, a dedicated search expedition using advanced underwater vehicles finally found it. The ship was discovered sitting perfectly upright on the seabed, almost 3,000 meters down. Its name, Endurance, was still clearly carved across the stern. The cold, oxygen-poor water had preserved the wooden timbers and countless details with an almost eerie perfection. It was not a scene of destruction, but a moment frozen in time. Ropes still coil on the decks, and the ship's wheel stands ready, as if waiting for a crew that will never return. This wreck is a different kind of monument. It does not speak of a civilization's collapse or a fatal design flaw. It stands as a physical tribute to the heroic age of exploration and the indomitable spirit that defines it. For archaeologists, it is a priceless, untouched time capsule. They can now study the exact layout of an early 20th century polar expedition vessel, from the crew's quarters to the engine room, offering new, intimate insights into how these men actually lived and worked before their great ordeal began. The Endurance teaches us that the most powerful shipwrecks are not always those that changed history through their loss. Some inspire us through the breathtaking human stories of those who lived to tell the tale, reminding us that even in our darkest hours, resilience can forge a legend. This enduring drive to uncover our past, to find these submerged stories, continues to push the boundaries of exploration today. A king watched from the shore as his pride sank beneath the waves. In July 1545, the English warship Mary Rose, flagship of Henry VIII's fledgling navy, heeled over and foundered during a battle with the French in the Solent. The loss was a very public humiliation and a stark blow to English naval power. For over 4 centuries, the ship lay buried in silt, its location and secrets forgotten. Then, in a spectacular feat of modern engineering and archaeology, the Mary Rose was raised from the seabed in 1982, emerging from the water like a ghost from another age. The ship itself was a treasure, but the true revelation lay within its hull. The thick mud had preserved an astonishing collection of more than 19,000 artifacts, creating a time capsule of Tudor England. Here were the longbows of the elite archers, still ready for battle. Medical kits contained syringes and jars for treating the crew. There were wooden plates and tankards, bones from the salted beef and cod they ate, and even the personal belongings of the men, from leather shoes to a backgammon set for passing the time. This was not just a wreck, it was a floating village, a complete cross-section of 16th century life frozen in a single, catastrophic moment. We can hear the creak of the decks under their feet and almost smell the tar and sweat. This intimate connection makes history breathe in a way no document ever could. The loss of the Mary Rose was a national tragedy for Tudor England, but its recovery is a gift to us, a window into a world we could otherwise only read about. The pursuit of such lost knowledge now drives us into even deeper waters, using technologies that would seem like magic to Henry VIII, all to find the echoes we have not yet heard. The same silt that preserved the Mary Rose for centuries now yields its secrets to machines that see with sound. Modern maritime archaeology is no longer just about divers and dredgers. It is a field transformed by silent, remote hunters like side-scan sonar, which paints a detailed picture of the seabed with acoustic pulses, revealing the ghostly outlines of a wreck long before a human eye ever sees it. Once a site is located, remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, descend. These robotic explorers are the archaeologists' eyes and hands in the crushing darkness, equipped with high-definition cameras and delicate manipulator arms to gently brush away sediment or retrieve an artifact with surgical precision. Perhaps the most revolutionary tool is 3D photogrammetry. By taking thousands of overlapping photographs from every conceivable angle, computers can stitch them together into a perfect, photorealistic digital model of a wreck. This virtual ship can be explored, measured, and analyzed down to the smallest nail, all from a computer on the surface. This non-invasive approach is a fundamental ethical shift. The goal is to study and preserve these sites without disturbing them, to learn everything while leaving everything in place. Projects like the Digital Vasa Museum let anyone in the world walk the decks of the resurrected warship, while detailed surveys of the Titanic have created an immersive record of the wreck as it slowly succumbs to iron-eating bacteria. But this powerful technology forces difficult questions. Is a shipwreck a historical site, or is it a grave site? For every Vasa raised with care, there is a Lusitania or an Arizona, a resting place for hundreds that demands solemn respect. The debate between preservation in situ, leaving the wreck untouched on the seabed as a memorial, and recovery for public display and study, is the central tension of the field. Do we bring artifacts to the surface to tell their stories to the world, or do we let the deep keep its secrets and its dead? These tools give us an incredible power, not to find treasure, but to safeguard the fragile pages of our shared human story written on the ocean floor. And with that power comes the profound responsibility to decide, as a global community, how that story should be read. The same technologies that allow us to find these time capsules also plunge us into a legal and ethical labyrinth. The moment a historically significant wreck is discovered, a battle begins over who truly owns history. Is it the modern nation that claims the waters, the descendants of the ship's original owners, the private salvagers who risked capital to find it, or all of humanity? The 2001 UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage was created to answer these questions. It advocates for preservation in situ, treating wrecks as archaeological sites to be studied, not treasure troves to be plundered. But this framework is not universally accepted, leaving a murky legal sea where competing claims collide. Consider the case of the Spanish galleon San José, sunk off the coast of Colombia in 1708 with a cargo of gold, silver, and emeralds worth billions of dollars today. Its discovery ignited a tense diplomatic firestorm. Spain claims the ship and its contents as a state vessel. Colombia asserts sovereignty over its territorial waters, and indigenous Bolivian groups argue the treasure was mined from their lands by colonial force. This is more than a dispute over wealth. It is a raw confrontation over the legacy of empire and the unresolved wounds of colonization. Beneath these legal arguments lies a deeper, more profound ethical question. How do we balance our thirst for knowledge with our duty to respect the dead? A ship like the San José is an archaeological site of immense historical value, a potential source of new understanding about 18th century shipbuilding and global trade. Yet it is also a war grave, the final resting place for hundreds of sailors who perished in the explosion that sent it to the bottom. Should their remains be disturbed for the sake of historical insight or financial gain? And what of the human cost embedded in the treasure itself, the stolen wealth that powered a brutal colonial system? The legal battles fought in courtrooms today are not just about long-lost gold. They are about who gets to tell the story of our shared past, and whether that story will be one of commercial exploitation, national pride, or collective human heritage. The past is not a quiet, settled place. It is a fiercely contested territory, and the rules we create now will determine whether these echoes from the depths are preserved for future generations or lost forever to the highest bidder. The sea's power to erase is not limited to ships. Beneath the calm surface of the Mediterranean and other coastal waters lie the ghostly outlines of entire cities, submerged not by myth but by geological force. While shipwrecks capture single moments of disaster, these sunken metropolises preserve entire chapters of urban life, frozen in time by earthquakes, tsunamis, or the slow, inexorable rise of the sea. Off the coast of Egypt, the city of Thonis Heracleon was little more than a legend, a grand port mentioned by ancient historians that seemingly vanished without a trace. Then, underwater archaeologists discovered its ruins scattered across the seabed. They found colossal statues of pharaohs standing guard in the silt, the remains of grand temples, and the anchors of countless ships that once tied up at its bustling docks. This was not just a town, it was a vital customs gateway and religious hub for all trade flowing between Egypt and Greece. A city that physically sank when the unstable clay of the Nile Delta liquefied during a cataclysm around the 2nd century before Christ. Its discovery provided stunning, physical proof of a city that scholars had begun to dismiss as pure fiction. Far older is Pavloptri, submerged off the coast of southern Greece. Its perfectly laid street plans, courtyards, and tombs date back over 5,000 years, making it the oldest known submerged city in the world. Walking, or rather swimming, through its grid is like exploring a blueprint for urban life at the dawn of civilization. It reveals a sophisticated society with a clear understanding of planning and maritime commerce, a society whose existence was entirely unknown before its underwater discovery. Then there is the legendary city of Dwarka off the western coast of India. For centuries, it was considered a sacred myth, the ancient kingdom of the Hindu god Krishna, said to have been reclaimed by the sea upon his death. Modern marine archaeology has uncovered massive stone structures, fortifications, and artifacts that date to a time that aligns with these ancient stories. The existence of a powerful, fortified port city in that location lends a startling historical weight to what was once considered pure scripture. What do these drowned worlds tell us? They are more than a collection of ruins. They are vast underwater libraries. The sediment that buried them protected organic materials, wooden tools, baskets, food remains that would have long since decayed on land. This gives us an incredibly detailed, street-level view of daily life, from what people ate to how they worshipped and organized their society. These cities confirm that our coastlines have never been a permanent, safe frontier. They are dynamic, shifting borders where human ambition constantly negotiates with the immense power of the ocean. In an age of modern climate change and rising sea levels, these ancient submerged cities stand as a sobering and powerful reminder. They are not relics of a lost past, but a silent warning from the depths about the fragility of our own coastal civilizations. The very forces that have guarded our submerged history are now turning against it. Climate change is not just a future threat, it is actively erasing the past. As global sea levels rise and powerful storms become more frequent, the delicate balance that preserved shipwrecks and sunken cities for centuries is being shattered. The same coastal erosion that uncovers a long-buried Viking trading vessel one year can wash its timbers away in the next great storm, leaving archaeologists with only a scattering of fragments. It is a devastating paradox where the very process of revelation is also the agent of destruction. The water itself is changing. Warmer ocean temperatures are accelerating the growth of wood-eating bacteria and shipworms, which now invade waters once too cold for them to survive. Metal hulls that rested intact for 100 years are now being consumed by rust at an alarming rate. Even the chemistry of the sea is shifting. Ocean acidification, driven by absorbed carbon dioxide, is slowly dissolving the calcium carbonate in seashells, ancient ballast stones, and even the concrete and mortar of submerged structures. This is a race against time on a global scale. The question is no longer just what we can find, but what we can save. This urgency is forging a new kind of archaeology, one driven by digital preservation. Teams are now using drones to map eroding coastlines and deploying autonomous underwater vehicles to conduct rapid, wide-area surveys of the seabed. Their mission is not always to recover artifacts, but to create perfect digital twins of these sites through 3D scanning and photogrammetry. They are building virtual museums for wrecks that may not survive the next decade. This work is a solemn duty, a frantic effort to safeguard the raw material of human memory before it fades back into the deep. These fragile echoes are a non-renewable resource. Once they are gone, their stories are lost forever, leaving our understanding of history permanently impoverished. That price tag for underwater discovery is truly staggering. A single day of operating a modern research vessel with its crew of technicians and a team of remotely operated vehicles can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is not a field for the faint of heart or the shallow of pocket. The quest to hear these echoes from the depths is fundamentally shaped by a difficult economic equation. Who pays the bill to uncover our shared history, and what do they expect in return? The answers to these questions create a deep and often bitter divide in the world of maritime exploration. On one side, you have academic and governmental institutions. Their missions are driven by pure research and preservation. Expeditions like the one that found the Endurance are funded through grants, university budgets, and sometimes national governments with the sole purpose of adding to human knowledge. Every artifact is meticulously documented and conserved, every piece of data shared with the public. The wreck site is treated as an archaeological dig, not a treasure chest. But this pure scientific approach is constrained by one overwhelming factor: budget. There is only so much grant money to go around, meaning countless historically significant wrecks may never be found because they are not a funding priority. This financial limitation opens the door for a very different model: private salvage. Companies argue that without the profit motive, many of the world's most famous wrecks would still be lost. They risk immense capital, sometimes tens of millions of dollars, on long searches with no guarantee of success. Their business model, however, depends on recovering valuable cargo, often melting down historic gold and silver coins into anonymous bullion to be sold at market. To archaeologists, this is the equivalent of melting a pharaoh's golden mask for its scrap value. It funds discovery, but at the cost of destroying the historical context and dispersing artifacts into private collections, effectively erasing the very story the salvagers claim to be telling. This tension between archaeology and profit is the central conflict in modern maritime exploration. Is it better for a ship's treasure to be recovered by a commercial operation and sold, with the world learning of its existence, or for it to remain untouched on the seabed until, or unless, public funding can be secured? There is no easy answer. This ethical dilemma has spurred the search for new financial paths. Crowdfunding campaigns now allow thousands of people to contribute small amounts, giving them a direct stake in an expedition's success. Public-private partnerships see museums or research institutes collaborating with corporate sponsors, sharing both the costs and the resulting educational exhibits. These emerging models offer a potential middle ground, a way to fund the high cost of exploration without sacrificing the integrity of the history being uncovered. The reality is that economics acts as a final, powerful gatekeeper. It decides which sunken stories we have the resources to hear, and which will remain forever as silent, anonymous lumps on a sonar readout, their secrets lost not to the sea but to a simple lack of funds. The line between a shipwreck and a sea legend is often as blurred as a foggy horizon. For centuries, storytellers have whispered of the lost continent of Atlantis, a sophisticated civilization swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. They have spoken of the Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship doomed to sail the oceans forever, its appearance an omen of doom. These tales are powerful because they tap into a universal human fear, the terror of being lost at sea without a trace. Real shipwrecks frequently get pulled into this orbit of myth. When archaeologists discovered the remains of a Roman shipwreck off the coast of Brazil, it ignited a firestorm of speculation. Could the Romans have crossed the Atlantic long before the Vikings or Columbus? The idea is compelling, a historical thriller waiting to be written. Yet the sober archaeological evidence tells a different, more nuanced story. The wreck's cargo of amphorae, those distinctive Roman jars, likely came from a much later Spanish galleon that also carried Roman artifacts as ballast or collectibles. There was no lost Roman colony, just the mundane reality of maritime reuse. This is the constant, delicate work of underwater archaeology, sifting through the sand and the stories to find the truth. Yet the pursuit of these legends, however fanciful, has its own value. The enduring hunt for Atlantis has driven explorers to survey coastlines and map seabeds from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, leading to the accidental discovery of entirely real, if less glamorous, shipwrecks and geological formations. These myths, in the end, are not really about finding a sunken city. They are a reflection of our own longing for mystery, a testament to the ocean's power to ignite our imagination with the promise of wonders just beyond our reach. The history we actually pull from the depths, from the Antikythera Mechanism to the ballast of the São José, is often more complex and more human than any legend. It grounds our fantasies in a reality that is every bit as compelling, and this reality extends beyond history books, touching the very environment that preserves these wrecks, creating artificial worlds that teem with life. A shipwreck's final voyage is only the beginning of its longest journey. On the seafloor, the silent hull ceases to be a relic of disaster and transforms into a cradle for life. The hard, unyielding surface of steel or wood offers a rare foothold in the shifting sands, an invitation for colonization. Tiny coral larvae, adrift in the currents, settle onto a gun turret. Sponges and sea anemones cling to railings, while algae paint the decks in vibrant, living colors. This new foundation becomes a bustling city in the desert of the deep. Small fish dart into the shelter of a collapsed corridor, seeking protection from predators. Lobsters and crabs scavenge in the dark recesses of cargo holds. Larger predators like groupers and sharks patrol the perimeter, drawn by the concentration of prey. A vessel built for human purpose is rewoven into the fabric of the ocean, its identity completely remade by the community it now supports. This process of renewal is so powerful that we now actively orchestrate it. Decommissioned warships, like the massive aircraft carrier USS Oriskany off the coast of Florida, are meticulously cleaned of pollutants and then deliberately sent to the seabed. Their sinking is not an end but a launch. These colossal structures become instant habitats, boosting local fish populations and creating world-class destinations for scuba divers, who now explore decks teeming with parrotfish and angelfish instead of sailors. This transformation is a profound symbol. A tool of war becomes a sanctuary for life, a place where beauty flourishes from tragedy. It adds a deep, ecological dimension to the historical stories these sites hold. They are not frozen in time, they are dynamic, living parts of the ocean's story, constantly changing and being changed by the environment they now call home. This intricate relationship between a human artifact and the natural world creates a narrative as rich and layered as the history the ship itself represents. A child's porcelain doll rests on the seabed, its painted eyes staring up through the darkness. This simple object, recovered from the debris field of the Titanic, carries more emotional force than any statistic ever could. It is a silent testament to a life interrupted, a small, personal anchor in a vast historical tragedy. Across countless wrecks, these recovered personal effects form a mosaic of human experience. A pair of spectacles, their lenses long dissolved, hints at a scholar or a clerk. A wedding band engraved with a forgotten date speaks of a love that outlasted the ship itself. These are not merely artifacts, they are the physical echoes of individual souls, each one a story of hope, fear, and ambition that was traveling across the world. While cargo manifests tell us what a ship carried, these objects tell us who was on board. They bridge the immense gap between the past and present, making the abstract intensely personal. Written accounts from survivors add a heartbreaking voice to this physical evidence. Diaries and letters describe the final, chaotic moments in vivid, terrifying detail. We read of the deafening roar of a tearing hull, the desperate scramble for lifeboats, and the haunting sound of a band playing as the deck tilts into the sea. These are not dry historical records, they are raw, first-hand testimonies of human bravery and despair, freezing a catastrophic event in the lived experience of those who were there. Today, forensic archaeology takes this mission of remembrance even further. By analyzing skeletal remains, scientists can now determine a person's age, their origin, and even specific injuries they sustained in life. On some wrecks, this has allowed researchers to put a name to anonymous bones, to reunite a lost sailor with their identity and their descendants. This work is an act of profound dignity, a refusal to let the thousands lost at sea become mere numbers in a ledger. These personal connections are what truly matter. They transform a shipwreck from an archaeological site into a shared human tragedy. History, in the end, is not about events or empires. It is about people, and their stories, whispered to us from the deep, are the most haunting and important echoes we will ever hear. Preserving these intimate narratives is just as crucial as preserving the rusted iron of the hulls, for they are the very soul of the history we seek to understand. The largest museum on Earth remains almost entirely unvisited, its priceless collection scattered across a dark seafloor we have barely begun to map. Less than 1% of this vast realm has been seen by human eyes, which means the greatest discoveries are almost certainly still ahead of us. Legends whisper from the charts, ships whose names are synonymous with lost fortunes. The Merchant Royal went down in 1641 off the coast of England, its holds reportedly filled with Mexican silver and gold worth billions in today's currency. Then there is the Flor de la Mar, a Portuguese carrack bursting with plunder from the conquest of Malacca. It sank in 1511 in a storm off the coast of Sumatra, taking one of the greatest treasures of the age of exploration to a watery grave. These are the holy grails that fuel dreams, but the true value of what remains hidden is far greater than gold. Think of the fleets of Kublai Khan, the Mongol emperor who tried to invade Japan in the 13th century only to see his armadas shattered by typhoons, the infamous divine winds. Finding even one of those specific vessels would offer an unparalleled window into Mongol naval technology, and the moment their expansion was decisively checked. Or consider the lost ships of explorers whose journeys ended in mystery, leaving blank spaces on the map that taunt historians. The coming decades promise a revolution in our ability to find them. Autonomous underwater vehicles can now tirelessly comb thousands of square miles of seabed, while artificial intelligence is being trained to analyze sonar data, instantly flagging the subtle, unnatural shapes of a wreck hidden in the murk. This is not science fiction. It is the emerging toolkit for the next golden age of discovery. The deep is patiently safeguarding secrets that could rewrite entire chapters of our story, from ancient trade routes to forgotten voyages. The next echo from the depths is not a matter of if, but when. Gold has a price, but knowledge is a treasure whose loss can never be truly calculated. Across centuries, countless vessels sailed not with chests of coin, but with something far more fragile and irreplaceable, the collected wisdom of their time. These were the library ships, the floating archives whose sinking represented a silent, catastrophic deletion from the human record. While we mourn the legendary fire that consumed the Library of Alexandria, we often forget the steady, drip-by-drip loss of knowledge that sank beneath the waves. The dispersal of scholarship in the ancient and medieval world depended almost entirely on maritime routes. A single ship might be carrying the only copy of a philosophical treatise from Athens to Rome, a cartographer's newly drawn world map, or a scholar's personal notes from a lifetime of astronomical observation. Its safe passage meant the continuation of an idea, the spark for a new discovery in a distant land. Its loss meant that spark was extinguished forever. Imagine the Byzantine ship carrying a trove of classical Greek texts to a waiting Italian patron during the Renaissance, only to be wrecked in a sudden Adriatic storm. Those unique manuscripts, painstakingly copied by monks, would have contained plays by Sophocles, histories by Livy, or scientific works by Archimedes that are now known only by their titles. Each sunken library created a small but permanent gap in our intellectual lineage, a dead end in the tree of human understanding. The progress of science, medicine, and philosophy was not just slowed, it was actively impoverished, forced to reinvent what the sea had already claimed. This is a loss that resonates differently than the clatter of gold coins on the seabed. It is the echo of a question that will never be answered, a cure that was never developed, a perspective on the human condition that is now forever silent. This profound understanding that our most precious heritage can be as fragile as paper and ink continues to drive modern explorers and scholars. They are not just searching for sunken galleons, but for any clue, any sealed chest that might hold a lost chapter of who we are. The official records and academic journals rarely tell the whole story of discovery. Some of the most important shipwrecks were first located not by funded expeditions, but by individuals whose obsession with a single clue led them to spend years or even decades searching. These amateur historians, local divers, and weekend explorers operate on passion, fueled by a deep knowledge of their own coastal waters and an insatiable curiosity. They are the ones who interview elderly fishermen about snagged nets, who scour old newspapers in library basements, and who dedicate their weekends to scanning the seabed with homemade sonar rigs. One of the most famous examples is the Whydah, the first fully authenticated pirate ship ever discovered. Its location off Cape Cod was not revealed by a government survey, but was painstakingly pursued by explorer Barry Clifford, who followed a trail of historical documents and local lore for over a decade. When the ship's bell was finally raised, inscribed with the words, "The Whydah Galley," it confirmed the dream of finding Captain Black Sam Bellamy's lost treasure. These dedicated individuals form a crucial bridge, translating the dry details of academic history into tangible, public excitement. They are often the first to share their discoveries with the world, generating a wave of interest that can secure the funding and institutional support for more detailed archaeological work. But this vital role comes with its own set of challenges. Without formal training in archaeological methods, an enthusiastic diver might accidentally disturb a site, moving artifacts from their original context and unknowingly erasing critical information about the ship's final moments. The delicate wood of a hull frame can be damaged by a careless fin kick, and a cannon's position can tell a story of the ship's list as it sank, a story lost if the object is hauled immediately to the surface. The community of wreck enthusiasts is therefore a vital, yet sometimes controversial, part of the ecosystem. Their passion is the engine of discovery, but it must be guided by a shared ethic of preservation. This delicate balance between public participation and professional stewardship will ultimately determine how many more of the ocean's hidden stories are brought to light, and in what condition we find them. A child's doll on the seabed speaks to a universal human truth that we see ourselves in these losses. Our deep fascination with shipwrecks is not just about history, it is a profound psychological pull, a memento mori from the deep that whispers to us about our own fragility. These sunken giants are stark reminders of mortality on a grand scale, where human ambition meets the irresistible force of nature. The ocean remains one of our planet's final frontiers, a vast and alien wilderness, and every wreck is a monument to our attempts to cross it, to tame it, and sometimes to be humbled by it. This potent mix of adventure, mystery, and tragedy weaves a narrative that resonates in our very bones. We are drawn to the story of the Titanic not merely for its scale, but for its stark lesson in hubris. It taps into a fundamental need to comprehend catastrophe, to find order and meaning in sudden, chaotic loss. Why does a great disaster hold such power over our imagination? It forces a confrontation with the unpredictable, allowing us to safely explore our deepest fears from a distance. This psychological draw is the engine behind every documentary, every book, and every expedition that seeks out these silent witnesses. Our enduring attraction to these sunken relics is ultimately a mirror. It reflects our own complex relationship with risk, with the drive to explore, and with the timeless, haunting call of the unknown. A ship's final moments are often painted not in water, but in ink and oil. The raw historical fact of a disaster is only the beginning of its story. Its emotional truth is so often shaped by the artists and writers who give it a human face. J.M.W. Turner's tempestuous seascapes do not show us calm, technical diagrams of ships. They immerse us in the sublime fury of the ocean itself, where vessels are mere splinters against an overwhelming natural power. This artistic interpretation translates the terror of a storm into a feeling we can viscerally understand. In literature, Samuel Taylor Coleridge's epic poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, uses the haunting image of a ghostly, becalmed ship to explore themes of guilt, isolation, and the profound cost of violating the natural world. The mariner's lament, alone on a wide, wide sea, gives voice to the universal dread of being utterly and hopelessly lost. But no single wreck has permeated our creative consciousness more deeply than the Titanic. Its story has been told and retold in countless films, from the grand romantic spectacle of James Cameron's blockbuster to more intimate dramatic accounts. Each version makes a choice about which story to tell, whether it is the stricture of social class, the quiet bravery of the musicians, or the fatal arrogance of the belief in an unsinkable ship. These artistic choices are powerful. They decide which aspects of the tragedy will be remembered most vividly by the public. A novel might focus on a single fictional passenger, allowing us to experience the chaos and fear through their eyes, transforming a statistic into a person we grieve for. This process of creative retelling is how we collectively process a catastrophe. The sheer, numbing scale of thousands of lives lost is too vast for the human mind to easily hold, but the story of one man placing his wife and children into a lifeboat, knowing he will never see them again, is a moment of heartbreaking clarity we can all feel. Art and literature provide that essential emotional framework. They translate the cold data recovered from the seabed into the warmth and ache of shared human experience. The enduring cultural presence of these sunken ships, from gallery walls to silver screens, proves their impact is far more than historical. They have become permanent fixtures in our collective imagination, their echoes amplified and given color by every new generation of storytellers, ensuring the lessons and the lives lost are never truly forgotten. The silent clock of decay starts ticking the moment a relic breaks the surface. After centuries of perfect preservation in the cold, dark depths, exposure to air and light can cause catastrophic damage within hours. Wood that seemed solid can warp, crack, and crumble as its waterlogged cell walls collapse. Iron can turn to dust as salts absorbed from the seawater trigger rapid corrosion. This is the cruel paradox of discovery, the rescue that can become a death sentence without immediate and expert intervention. Conservation is not a quick restoration. It is a complex, long-term science dedicated to halting this self-destruction. For a massive wooden hull like the Vasa, this meant a decades-long shower. The ship was continuously sprayed with polyethylene glycol, a waxy substance that slowly replaces the water inside the wood cells, preventing them from collapsing as they dry. This process alone took over 17 years. Metal objects require an equally intricate approach. They are often placed in an electrolytic reduction tank, where a gentle electrical current is passed through a chemical solution. This process actively draws out the corrosive salts that have infested the metal for centuries, stabilizing the object from the inside out. Leather and textiles demand their own specialized chemical baths and controlled drying environments. The goal is never to make an artifact look factory new. A cannon is not polished to a shine, and a timber is not varnished. The aim is to stabilize, to freeze the object in its current state, preserving every scar and detail that tells its true story. This work requires immense resources, patience, and a profound respect for the original material. The ongoing conservation of the Vasa and the Mary Rose are not projects with end dates, they are permanent commitments. They stand as monuments to the sobering reality that raising a ship is only half the battle. The true journey from the deep to the museum display case is a marathon run over generations, a silent promise we make to the past to safeguard its fragile echoes for the future. These museums are the living memory of the ocean's hidden history. In Stockholm, the Vasa Museum does not simply house a salvaged ship, it presents a breathtaking spectacle. You stand in the hushed hall, dwarfed by the towering, ornate stern of the warship, its wooden sculptures still bearing traces of their original paint. The sheer physical presence of the vessel is transformative, pulling you directly into the 17th century. This is the power of institutions like the Mary Rose Museum in Portsmouth and the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney. They are far more than display cases, they are active, breathing research centers. Behind the public galleries, teams of archaeologists meticulously study a single timber or a preserved leather shoe, while conservators work tirelessly to halt the decay of artifacts exposed to air after centuries. Every object is a piece of a puzzle, and these experts are dedicated to assembling the full picture of life and loss. Their work transforms a silent hull into a narrative filled with human voices. To make this history accessible, museums have moved beyond static labels. Imagine an interactive display that lets you virtually mix the copper and tin from the Uluburun wreck to create bronze, or a soundscape that recreates the creaking timbers of a ship at sea. These immersive exhibits bridge the gap between past and present, allowing a child to understand the weight of a cannonball or the complexity of celestial navigation. This direct engagement is crucial, for it fosters a deep, personal connection to our shared heritage. Beyond their walls, these institutions are powerful advocates on the global stage. They collaborate across borders, sharing research and expertise to protect vulnerable wreck sites from looting and commercial exploitation. They champion the idea that these sunken stories are a collective human inheritance, not a treasure trove for the highest bidder. By bringing these echoes from the depths into the light, maritime museums perform an essential duty. They ensure that the lessons of hubris, the realities of human cost, and the sparks of forgotten genius are not lost to the abyss, but are instead woven permanently into the fabric of our identity. The same cold that grips the ocean depths also preserves history in the world's Great Lakes. These vast freshwater basins are monumental graveyards, holding thousands of ships lost in storms that rival any hurricane at sea. The legend of the Edmund Fitzgerald endures not just in history books, but in the haunting chords of a famous song. This massive iron ore freighter, longer than 2 football fields, vanished with all 29 souls during a monstrous gale on Lake Superior in 1975. Its story encapsulates the raw power of these inland seas and the men who challenged them. The Great Lakes were the industrial superhighway of a growing nation, carrying iron ore from Minnesota to the steel mills of Ohio and Pennsylvania, grain from the plains to the cities of the East, and immigrants toward new lives in the frontier West. Each shipwreck on these routes, from schooners to steamers, marks a point where ambition met the unpredictable fury of freshwater. The preservation in these cold, dark lakes is often astonishing. Without the corrosive salt and wood-boring teredo worms that plague ocean wrecks, wooden vessels rest on the bottom with their masts still standing and their deck hardware still in place, as if frozen in the moment they sank. The cold fresh water acts as a perfect time capsule, sometimes protecting even the personal belongings of the crew with an eerie clarity. This offers archaeologists a different and often more complete window into the past. These are not tales of transatlantic empires or global warfare, but of regional commerce and community tragedy. They are the stories of the lakeshore towns that watched for ships that never returned, stories often physically closer to home for millions. The echoes from these depths remind us that history's pivotal moments are not confined to the open ocean, but resonate wherever deep water and human endeavor meet. A pirate ship was not a floating treasure chest, but a desperate floating democracy. The wreck of the Wider, the only fully authenticated pirate ship ever discovered, shatters the romantic myth. Its remains off Cape Cod tell a story of hard, pragmatic violence. Archaeologists found not a mountain of gold coins, but a scattered assortment of everyday tools, weapons from different nations, and personal items from a crew that was astonishingly diverse. The ship itself was a captured vessel, a former slave ship that the pirates adapted for their own use. This was the reality of the golden age of piracy. These were not just outlaws, but often former sailors, indentured servants, and escaped slaves who had rejected the brutal hierarchy of naval and merchant ships to form a society based on shared plunder and rough consensus. Their ships became microcosms of a radical, albeit fleeting, alternative world. The artifacts from these wrecks, from West African gold weights to English pewter spoons, map a truly global criminal economy. They preyed upon the very merchant ships that formed the backbone of European empires, intercepting the flow of sugar, tobacco, and human beings. This constant threat of piracy forced a monumental response. The British Royal Navy, in particular, embarked on a relentless campaign to clear the sea lanes. This was not merely a police action, it was a vital economic necessity. The suppression of pirates, symbolized by the wreck of Blackbeard's Queen Anne's Revenge off the North Carolina coast, made the oceans safe for the insurance markets and predictable shipping schedules that global capitalism required. Every pirate ship sent to the bottom by naval broadsides was a victory for economic order. The sunken hulls of both the hunters and the hunted are the physical evidence of this pivotal conflict. It was a war for the soul of the ocean itself, a struggle between chaotic freedom and controlled commerce. The victory of commerce did not end drama on the high seas. It simply shifted the stage to a new kind of vessel, one that carried a different, more subtle kind of power. From the copper-laden holds of the Uluburun to the opulent decks of the Titanic, these sunken vessels are not merely relics of disaster. Each wreck marks a precise moment where history itself pivoted, where the ambitions of empires were checked by the unforgiving sea, where revolutionary technologies were swallowed and lost for centuries, and where countless human lives were irrevocably altered. They stand as powerful monuments to the fragility of our grandest endeavors when confronted by the immense, untamable power of the natural world. The echoes we recover from these depths are not confined to the past. They actively shape our present, informing the international laws that govern maritime safety, inspiring new engineering solutions, stabilizing our global economies, and deepening our understanding of the human story itself. As our technology improves, the vast, uncharted museum of the ocean floor promises to yield even more of these transformative stories. Each new discovery, whether a legendary galleon or a humble trader, holds another crucial piece of the intricate puzzle of human civilization. Let these profound echoes be a call to listen ever more closely to the lessons preserved in the deep, for the past still has essential wisdom to offer us as we navigate the uncertain waters of the future. The stories these silent witnesses tell are a legacy that belongs to all of us. If these echoes from the depths have captivated your imagination, please help us continue sharing these journeys by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support allows us to delve even deeper into history's greatest mysteries. We are genuinely curious to know which shipwreck you find most fascinating. Was it the tragic fate of the Titanic, the forgotten genius of the Antikythera Mechanism, or the heroic survival saga of the Endurance? And which lost vessel, still hidden in the abyss, would you most want to see discovered? Share your thoughts and personal favorites in the comments below. We read every single one and love hearing from you, building a community of fellow explorers. Thank you for joining us on this voyage through time. Until our next journey into the past, keep exploring the world around you and the stories hidden just beneath the surface.